Welcome to Looking at Legal Stuff. Today we have two hearings in a case with a couple where Dad claims he only found out that his son was his biological child after he was recently contacted by the Child Support Office, who wanted him to do a DNA test to establish paternity, which came as a huge shock to him because he says Mom told him 3 years ago that she had a DNA test showing another man was the father. He says that since discovering the child was his biological son, he's been doing everything he can to make up for lost time, but Mom won't allow him to see the child without her constant supervision. He says she also made up some wild accusations about him, including the claim that he has some sort of criminal record. But Dad says not only does he not have any sort of criminal record, but he wouldn't have had a job working for the federal government for the last 20 years if he'd had the sort of record she claims. What does Mom have to say about her controlling behavior? Let's find out.
This originated as a complaint to establish parentage filed by the District Attorney's Child Support Office, if I understand correctly.
Yes.
And paternity having been established, this is a motion to set visitation. You are Amy Susan Hewitt. Ms. Hewitt, you understand why we're here today?
Yes, and I would like to get a GAL or a CASA advocate for my case and request that before making any determination, the court review his criminal record, request a record of any child protective investigation, and that he's been involved with, and require he take a drug screen.
Well, first and foremost, let me tell you that there's a motion that has been filed to set visitation, and that motion was set for hearing today. You have not yet filed any sort of response to that motion as far as this record reflects. Have you filed anything in writing?
I don't have an attorney.
Yes, ma'am, I understand that. The child support DA is not going to represent you in this matter because that's not their job. They only handle the child support action. But you have the right to hire an attorney of your own choosing if you choose to do so. The question is whether or not you are planning to do that.
I can afford told to ask for guardian ad litem.
A guardian ad litem. Guardian ad litems are not automatically awarded because of the simple fact that if I appoint a guardian ad litem, there has to be, number one, a valid basis for the appointment of a guardian ad litem. Number two, it has to do with who is going to pay for the guardian ad litem's fees. They don't do it for free. Usually there's an attorney that's appointed, and that attorney expects to be paid according to that. And in a civil case, most of the time the guardian ad litem is paid by either one or both of the parties. So it would be an expense to you and to Mr. Fenton. So paternity was just established in May of this year. According to the file, it says that on May 20th of 2024, the court held that the father was the biological father of the minor child. Well, I cannot, simply because you asked me to appoint you appoint a guardian ad litem. Now, as far as the CASA, you have every right if that's what you choose to do, but that is not something that the court normally orders as well. You have opposition to Mr. Fenton having visitation with a minor child?
He's 3 years old. I let him come around supervise a couple times. Over, and he lives out of state.
Well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to conduct a hearing of sorts, and I'm going to hear from him about what he's asking me to do, and because he set this motion, and then I'll hear from you about what your reasons are. What you're stating is really testimony, and I need that to be under oath. So we'll have this hearing, and then when I've had the hearing, I'll make a decision on what, if any, visitation or whether to appoint a guardian ad litem at that point, okay? All right, just have a seat at that table, please. All right, Mr. Murphy, you wish to put on proof?
Yes, Your Honor. We would call our client, Matthew Fenton, to
Mr.
stand.
Fenton, step around, please, and have a seat in the witness stand.
Could you please state and spell your full name for the record?
Matthew Christopher Fenton, Matthew-Fenton.
And Mr. Fenton, are you the co-parent? Are you a co-parent of Amy Susan Hewitt?
Yes, sir.
Both of you have a child together?
Yes, sir.
How old is the child?
He turned 3 February.
And you're here today because you would like to begin visitation with the child. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Have you
Well,
made
you're
any?
going to have to speak into that microphone a little bit more.
Yes, sir.
Have you made any efforts thus far to get visitation?
Yes. She allowed me to come on 3 visits.
Who is she?
Miss Hewitt allowed me to come 3 different times after March 25th when I was, I'd taken a DNA test, and I went to her house after 12 noon, and I stayed until 7 2 times, and then the third time I stayed until 9 p.m. My mom, it's just turned 82 years old. She went twice. That's the only 2 times she's ever seen him. And we just would like rights. I was never told the truth. I was told that it was another man's child, that she had DNA tested the father. I came in when he was born, or when his expected date was February 24th, 2021. I was working in Virginia, and I drove in from out of state 8 hours away, and Miss Hewitt told me that it was not my child, that she had DNA tested the father, that it had nothing to do with me. I never heard anything back, and I don't know. I believed her. I've never had a child before. This is my only child, and I'd just like to, be involved in his life and get to visit him.
Has Miss Hewitt refused you visitation at any point?
Yes, sir.
Tell us about that.
I went 3 times. Well, we had the court hearing, and it said on the documents that you have there, Mr. Wolf signed off that I should receive reasonable visitation. And I highlighted it and sent a copy to Miss Hewitt and asked her for visitation. I even really wanted to get him for Father's Day, because I'd already missed a few. And I drove down and went to the district attorney's office that day and spoke with the child support lady as well. And, she told me to contact my attorney, and then I came on to the courthouse. But yeah, she will not allow me to see him, and told me not to come back to her house. And that pretty much happened when I filed for visitation rights.
Did you advise her that that was part of the court order?
Yes, sir.
Looks like alternate residential parent, non-custodial parents will have reasonable visitation privileges. Did you tell her about that?
Yes, sir.
What was her response?
She doesn't care.
And you did give her a copy of that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You just heard her make some claims just now when she appeared up here at the podium about criminal charges and all sorts of other things. Do you have any kind of response to that?
Yeah, I don't have a criminal record. I've worked on federal projects for the last 23 years since I was 18. I'm currently doing a Send Elements battery recycling facility, which is government-backed and is a federal project. I take random drug tests and more than happy to take one right now today in court. And I don't even have a bad driving record. Nothing's on that as well. So
Where do you live at?
I live in Scottsville, Kentucky for the last 16 years. It'll be 17 years in April of next year.
Okay. So just from just so we just understand how this would work, how would you propose, visitation work if you being out of Kentucky and her being here in Tennessee?
I'm more than happy to make the drive to come pick my son up and drop him back off, just whatever it takes to see my son.
You just want to start seeing your son again?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let me ask you this. Have you taken a parenting class recently?
Yes, sir. I have a completion, but it's on my phone. I don't have it printed off. But
You don't have a physical copy, but you did complete it?
Yes, sir. And
This morning?
I emailed it to you as well. So
Okay.
we can get that,
So you'd be happy to late file it if we have to?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Those were all my questions. Thank you very much, Mr. Fenton.
Ms. Hewitt, you are representing yourself at this hearing. You have the right to ask questions of this witness. I'm going to give you a chance to testify if you want to testify, but do you have questions that you want to ask of this witness? You're not required to ask questions. I'm just giving you the opportunity. If you want to ask questions, they must be in question form, and it must relate to some issue that's before the court. Do you want to ask him any questions about what he's testified to?
I gave you time with Ashton supervised at my house, right?
I took him every time that I was there, and your daughter.
And supervised
eat.
and with your mom.
No, I mean, the first time wasn't, my mom wasn't with me.
You just testified your mom came with you.
Twice.
Yeah.
The one
And she-
time, the first time I came alone, and I took him to the auto parts store to get parts to fix your car because it was broken down. And I came back on my first visit and fixed it so you had transportation. And then also gave her money to get insurance and to get her tags for her vehicle so they would have a reliable vehicle and transportation.
I never denied you that I seeing him at my house supervised, right?
Yeah,
I denied you.
the messages I have say not to come
I've got
back.
all of them printed out along from your ex-wife too,
Okay, I mean, I don't,
where
you shouldn't have, I don't see,
the reason is he's autistic, nonverbal. You've known about him since day one.
Number one, you're testifying now. I'm going to give you a chance to
Sorry.
testify, but you are not required. I mean, you cannot make statements and testify at this point.
Well, CPS has been involved with him in the past and his ex-wife.
And again, you're testifying, and I'm not going
I'm
to allow you
sorry,
to do
okay.
that until you take the stand, okay?
Okay.
All right, thank you. Step down. Oh, let me ask you a couple of questions.
yes, sir.
You're asking for visitation at this point, but in the petition that you filed, you asked to be made the primary residential parent for this child. You aware of that?
Sir,
In other words, you want to be the person who has full custody of the child and she has visitation,
yes, sir.
even though you've not had but 3 visits with this child since he's been born?
Well, I mean, I'd like to make up for lost time and at least have, split visitation with him where, I mean, he's taken to me very well. I mean,
No, she's made statements several times about this child having some special needs. Are you aware of any special needs that your son has?
yeah, he's nonverbal. He doesn't speak, but I'm able to teach him stuff pretty easy.
And he's 3 years old.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
All right. Anything further, Mr. Murphy? Thank you, sir. Step down. Mr. Murphy, you may call your next witness. All right. Ms. Hewitt, you want to tell me why you don't want to let him have visitation, then come up, raise your right hand, let's place you under oath.
He has a bad history, and I've got proof from his sister, his ex-wife.
Well, number one, let me explain to you that this is a court of law. That means you can't just get up and say you've talked to somebody and they've told you things. You have to have those people come in as witnesses and testify themselves of their own direct knowledge. Otherwise, what they say would be considered to be hearsay. In other words, we could have witnesses come in all day long and say, well, Joe Blow out here told me that the father is a terrible human being and he does this or does that. So it's not sufficient for you to bring in statements of other people who supposedly have knowledge. You would have to have some sort of testimony from them in person so that Mr. Murphy, representing your child's father, would have the opportunity to then cross-examine them to determine whether or not they're being truthful or not truthful. That's the way the system works. So
getting their sealed court documents, but his ex told me she would resend them to me.
Again, Mr. Murphy's objecting to you saying what
So I
his
would need
ex-wife.
her,
When I'm talking to you, just be quiet, okay?
sorry.
When Mr. Murphy is objecting to you saying what the ex-wife said, which is the very reason that I've explained to you, that it's considered to be hearsay, a statement by someone made outside of the court that you're bringing in to prove the truth of what's in that statement. That's classic hearsay and it's not admitted. So tell me, other than what someone told you, what knowledge do you have? First of all, what kind of relationship did you and Mr. Fenton have before you became pregnant?
I was best friends with his sister, and we grew up together.
Okay.
I love his mom, love his sister. They had warned me prior, but
How long did you and Mr. Fenton have a relationship?
it was 3 months and he started acting erratic.
When you say, if you saw something that he was doing erratically, tell me what you saw that you think was erratic.
Driving crazy, screaming, scaring me and my daughter, cussing, throwing things.
And why were those things happening?
Be honest, I don't know.
Were you and he having an argument?
Not at all.
Was he under the influence of some substance? You have any knowledge of that, or are you just assuming that?
I have knowledge from being around past family members with the same issues and talking to his sister and mother and them informing me.
Again, Mr. Murphy is
sorry.
objecting, so I'm sustaining his objection. I won't allow you to testify about what they said. So you become pregnant, did that end your relationship, or did you stay together after you became pregnant?
I've got my messages in his, but he didn't want us to, he just dropped off the earth because I wouldn't uproot my children and go live in a travel trailer while he worked out of state.
So when did you and he stop having a relationship?
I was 4 months pregnant.
All right. From 4 months pregnant until March of this year, did he ever see or have any contact with this child?
No,
Okay. Did you ever refuse him to have contact
No.
with the child? Again, just wait till I'm finished. Did you ever refuse to let him have contact with your son before that March date that he's referred to?
no, sir.
Did he ever contact you before he was served with a petition to establish paternity and to set child support? Did he ever contact you and ask for visitation?
No, sir.
All right, so the first time he asked for visitation was after you and he had been to court over the child support?
Yeah, it's
All right.
about,
And then you allowed him to have supervised visitation, come into your house, being with your child, correct?
yes, and his
All
mother.
right. And his mother came along too?
Yes.
Is there any reason why you would not allow him to have that type of visitation right now?
I never said that I told him he could come to my house
All right.
supervised.
Tell me about your son. What issues does your son have?
He's got a rare heart condition, Epstein's anomaly, pulmonary hypertension. And then he's nonverbal autistic. He gets therapy through the week and PK3
Where does he get therapy?
at pre-K with special services. He's started at TEIS, Tennessee Early Intervention,
Okay.
from birth, and then we moved over with the Board of Education when he turned 3. And he goes to school during the week, and he gets OT, PT, speech, ABA.
All right. And where does he go to school?
Oakmont.
Oakmont. Now, what I'm understanding you to say is that you have concerns on what people have told you about Mr. Fenton and his past, but that you would be willing to let him have visitation at your home?
I would be willing to let him, if I was there, just not
Well, that's what
him
I'm
taking.
talking
Yes,
about.
sir.
But you don't want him taking the child away at this point.
No, sir.
All right. Anything else you want to tell me about, other than what somebody may have told you? Is there anything else you want to tell me about your son?
He's
Mr.
my
Fenton.
world.
You understand that when he was held to be the father by the, when he was held to be the father by the child support magistrate, then that means he has certain rights under the law, that he has the right as a father to see this child, his son. The only question, you don't get to have it both ways. You don't get to have, for example, the child support paid but no visitation, absent a finding that he poses an immediate and serious harm, threat of harm to your son. In other words, if you establish paternity, those rights go with the child support obligation. He has a right to see the child. So the question is, do you understand he has a right as a father to visit with his son?
Yes, and I never denied him seeing him.
Okay.
And I've raised a 22-year-old with autism who's in college, successful, works at Walgreens as a pharmacy tech. I've got a 12-year-old with autism also. Like, I've done this a long time, and I've known him a long time, and he wouldn't be safe.
All right. Mr. Murphy, you have any questions? Lost our camera with this thing. Drop my pen.
Let me ask you some questions. First off, I think you made it pretty clear. You said you're not opposed to him having visitation with the child. Is that correct?
I never was, as long as it was supervised, I was there.
Okay, what exactly are your concerns as far as him being able to have the child at his house?
Number one, he's never raised a child or been in his life for 3 years. He doesn't know him. I mean, just because he puts his hands up to him, he does it to any man because he's not around men.
So how much time would you say would be needed to get to know the child before you'd be comfortable at that stage?
With him, what stage?
With him actually having a child at his house?
I don't know.
You don't know.
I mean, he's autistic and nonverbal, and I mean, he's a complete stranger.
Have you given Mr. Fenton the opportunity to assist with the child's autistic and nonverbal needs?
I was more than willing. The only reason I objected to anything was when he told me to have him ready Friday night, and then he would drop him back off on Monday. That's when I cut it off.
What do you mean that's when you cut it off?
That's when I cut off. I was like, you're not taking my child out of state that can't even tell me when something's wrong. You've never raised a child. You have no idea what this is like, much less with autism and his heart condition. He's never been a night away from me.
Okay, but I think, is there a point to where you have to understand he has parenting rights to this child just like you do, right?
Yes.
So is there a point to where you'd be willing to agree, okay, yeah, you can take him overnight?
I mean, we would have to see if it would, I don't know. I don't know.
Okay. Judge, let me see if my client has any questions other than that.
All right, thank you, ma'am. You may step down and have a seat at the table. Mr. Murphy, do you say you have something else?
Yes, Mr.
All right, call your witness. Step right up here, please, ma'am.
Could you please state and spell your full name for the record?
Elena Page Reimers, ALAINAREMERS.
Ms. Reimers, do you know Mr. Fenton?
I do.
How do you know him?
He's my mom's boyfriend.
Has he raised you at any point?
Yes.
Can you tell us a bit about that?
He's raised me since I was 12 and provided me with everything that I've needed.
Do you and him have a father-daughter relationship?
I would say so, yes.
What would you say about that experience as him acting like your father?
He's done more than what my actual father could have.
You've never seen him have any kind of drug problems or
No.
any criminal activities?
No.
Okay. All right. You think, based on what you've seen, he'd have any problem raising a 3-year-old child?
No.
Okay. Those will be all my questions, Your Honor.
You have any questions for this witness? You have a seat, please. You testified about that, but to your knowledge, has Mr. Fenton ever dealt with an autistic child that's 3 years of age that's nonverbal?
No.
Okay. Thank you. You can step down. Any other witnesses, Mr. Murphy? All right. Do you have any other witnesses you wish to call? All right. This is a temporary hearing on a motion to establish some sort of visitation. The order that established Mr. Fenton's paternity of this child was entered by the child support magistrate on May 20th of 2024. And at that time, the order that was entered was entered based on the failure of the plaintiff to appear, which was Mrs. Hewitt. And nonetheless, it was entered that there would be a child, there would be a establishment of paternity, and that he was found to be the father, that the primary residential parent would be the mother, and that the defendant, as the alternate residential parent, would have reasonable visitation privileges. So it has been established, and what is reasonable to one person is not always reasonable to the other, and that's one of the problems with reasonable visitation. The court finds that it is based upon the distance between these parties that it is reasonable for Mr. Fenton to have visitation at Mrs. Hewitt's or Miss Hewitt's home for a period of noon until 9 o'clock on every Saturday. Well, we'll make it one Saturday, and then alternate week will be Sunday. And that will continue for a period of 90 days. Following that, he will have visitation consisting of all day, and it will no longer be supervised. In other words, I'm going to graduate that to, it'll go from 8 o'clock in the morning until 8 o'clock or 6 o'clock that night, and it'll be day long, and he'll be allowed at that point to remove the child. After 90 days of every week having the child, visiting with the child, we'll assume that there is a problem, that there is no problem, and he'd be able to have the child and go that. That's all I'm going to do on a temporary basis. That will be continuing, and he'll have that child 1 week on Saturday, 1 week on Sunday, but he'll see it weekly because I'm trying to establish a bond between him and the child. This is a difficult situation because of the child's special needs. If you want to consult the CASA people to see whether or not they can assist you in that regard, but there's no evidence before me to indicate that there is any problem with Mr. Fenton as a father, and you can expect that barring something, this will gradually increase to become a lot more like a normal visitation situation. But a lot of that depends on whether or not Mr. Fenton is able to handle dealing with this young man and whether or not the child adjusts to being away from you and the special needs that he has are a question for the court. So I'm going to order this as a temporary basis, and then subject to review. If the parties can't work out an agreement, Mr. Murphy, you can revisit this by motion. All right. And Ms. All right, thank you. And Ms. Hewitt, if you consult with the CASA people and they are able to give you some assistance, then, we can this is a temporary order, which means it doesn't, if the child has an adverse reaction, and again, I'm going to encourage you in order as a part of this, so that both parties will work to encourage the visitation being as smooth and beneficial to the child and not create an environment where the child is hesitant to go with his father. So part of it's going to be your job is to try to make him comfortable with going to see his father. But if there is an issue, then it can always come back before the court, me or one of the other judges. All right, thank you.
Both parties are here. I think it'll take about an hour.
All right. If you are ready, I'm ready, and we'll take it up.
We are, Judge.
When are you supposed to have your surgery?
I had it, I had the surgery last Thursday.
For your broken leg?
Yes.
Okay.
I had to rewire my ankle and my shin together, so I'm non-weight bearing for another several weeks, so. I'm gonna move my stuff.
I just now found counsel with Ms. Duke, and I don't know.
I'm sorry, who?
Hillary Duke, that I meet with tomorrow morning. Court continues.
Ms. Hendrickson, Ms. Hewitt has advised, and Ms. Duke has confirmed that she is an appointment to retain Ms. Duke tomorrow. And I'm always inclined to give people an opportunity. I have December the 30th available so that it doesn't have to be put off real long. Are you available on December the 30th?
I am out of the office. That's the only week I take off every year. But if Your Honor needs me here.
Well, let's do this. Mr. Fenton is entitled to have visitation with his child over Christmas. Are you opposing that?
In the original judgment that you ordered August 30th that was on YouTube, I screen recorded it. And he had an attorney, but he fired it, so the papers never got filed. But you said 90 days come back to court, supervised Saturdays, alternating Sundays. That's what the order was. And then he got a new lawyer that's putting stuff in the order saying that he can take them unsupervised, and that's just not okay.
Your Honor, I also watched that.
Well, we don't have a transcript of that, and I'm not going back and watch a YouTube video of my own court to determine what I did or did not rule. The docket sheet may reflect that. Listen to what I'm about to say, and that is, he is entitled to have some sort of visitation over Christmas. I'm going to step off. I'm going to give you and Ms. Hendrickson an opportunity, and Ms. Duke, you can be involved in it if you choose to. I know you're not really retained at this point, but you may want to talk to her now and see whether or not that's likely that you're going to be able to be retained. But I'm going to hear something about Christmas visitation. He needs to be able to see this child or children.
No problem. Any
Pardon?
I have no problem letting him see him supervised.
All right. Well, let's talk to Ms. Hendrickson and see what you two can agree upon. And I'll take about a 10-minute recess, and then I'm going to come back, and then I will start this as soon as I come back. And if you two don't have an agreement on Christmas, and we'll go until I have to leave at 11 and come back at 2, we'll take it back up again.
Thank you, Your
All
Honor.
right. Amy Suzanne Hewitt versus Matthew Christopher Fenton. Assume that you are unable at this point to resolve this matter. All right, then we'll conduct a hearing, but I'm going to limit this hearing only on the Christmas visitation that is being requested. So what are you specifically asking for? You'll turn that microphone, well, just come up here.
December the 24th, beginning at 8 a.m. to December the 25th at 12 p.m. So mother can have that second half.
So he wants the Christmas Eve and Christmas morning.
Yes, Judge. He didn't have the Thanksgiving because he was not able to do the visitation. So we're hoping we can get the Christmas Eve to Christmas morning.
Prior to this, this child is 2 years old, I think, 3 years old. The child is,
3 years old, Judge.
and what has he been having for visitation up to this point?
The order is originally every weekend, Saturday and Sunday, alternating from 12 p.m. to 9 p.m. until 90 days was over, which is what it was over by the end of November. And then beginning December, it was supposed to be from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. unsupervised, still during the weekends.
All right. Then you may put on your proof, call your first witness.
Judge, I call my client, Mr.
Step around, I guess it's going to be here, so have you come around here. Is Hillary,
She's not been retained, is what I have heard.
all right.
Mr. Fenton, state your full name for the record.
Matthew Christopher Fenton.
Okay. If we calculate from August the 31st, when you had your first visitation, all the way to 90 days, actually to today, you would have had 16 days of visitation. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And out of those 16 days, how many were you able to actually spend time with your son, Ashton?
She only allowed me 8 visits.
8 visits. During those 8 visits, how was Ashton responding to you whenever you show up at Miss Hewitt's home?
Oh, he's really excited, just jumping up and down every time I get to the door,
Okay,
trying to put his shoes on so he can go to the park.
okay. So he's pretty much know you by your face, and what does he call you?
He's not really real verbal, but
Okay. Are you able to ascertain his needs between you and him interacting?
yes, ma'am.
Is he able to basically, you just said that he's mostly nonverbal, is that what you said?
Yeah, he says little things like go and yeah, I mean, but he's not really that verbal.
Okay. But in terms of going to the bathroom or if he needs to eat and things like that, are you able to figure out what your son needs?
Yes, ma'am. I've
Okay.
done my parenting class.
All right. And isn't it true that you're able to take him out of Miss Hewitt's home, some of those visits without her being present, but with her consent?
Yes, it started December 1st. I should have received 3 visits. I drive down every weekend and
Hold on, Mr. Fenton. Oh, you need to,
Microphone, see if
I might
Yeah,
need to get a
you
little
need to get
closer. Is that
closer,
better?
yes.
pull
Okay.
the base of it to you.
Okay.
let me rephrase my question. During those 8 days that you had visitation, did Miss Hewitt allow you to take Ashton outside of her home without her presence and you were able to visit with him?
Yes, ma'am. Me and her daughter Sophie and Ashton, and then my fiance Asia, we would go to the park, which is just a few hundred feet down the road from her house.
Okay.
And then on one occasion, I had to go get Miss Hewitt some car parts. Her car had messed up, and me, Asia, and Ashton all went together to get those without her.
Okay. And what are your plans for Christmas? Do you have any relatives?
Yeah, my mom, my sister, and my nieces are all planning to come to the house for Christmas.
Okay. And you got gifts prepared for Ashton?
Oh, yeah, got his whole room set up. We had 13 family members come over for Thanksgiving, but I wasn't allowed to get him. She would not even answer the door.
Right. And then my last question to you is just describe to the judge, how many bedrooms do you have in your home?
3.
Okay. And you would have a separate bedroom for Ashton to sleep over if you're allowed to take him there from the 24th to the 25th?
Yes, ma'am. It's all set up. His toddler bed, everything he needs. It's a brand new room. I built the house, and it's never been stayed in.
Okay. In fact, I will show you photos.
You may.
Who took these photos?
I did.
Fairly recent?
Yes, ma'am. This was just last weekend
Okay.
on
And-
Sunday.
Okay, and those photos fairly depict the
Have
condition
you
of your
shown Ms.
home?
Hewitt those photos?
Yes, Judge, I gave her a copy, actually. So those photos, if you can peruse through them, it shows your home, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And then you have a separate bedroom where it's got a mini bed for Ashton, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And do you feel that your home is safe for him
Most definitely.
and suitable?
Most definitely.
And who lives there?
Me, my fiance, Asia, and my stepdaughter, Elena.
Okay, and how long have you been living with your fiance and Elena?
Just a little bit over 3 years.
Okay, so you've been in.
October was 3 years.
Okay, and Elena was actually on the stand the last time that you were in front of Judge Wolf, is that correct?
That's correct.
And she testified that you had taken care of her all that time, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Judge, I would like to enter that as an exhibit.
All right, mark it as Exhibit 1.
And then I will show you another set of pictures. Pictures, Mr. Fenton.
Asia, my fiance.
Okay, and what do those pictures depict?
Us at the park. Well, I guess on one occasion at the park, we went multiple times. And then this one depicts, he really likes to get in my truck and push the horn and play with all the buttons. And he thinks it's funny because I won't let him push the horn. He tries to get around me to do it. And then, no,
Those
actually,
photos were
it's 2
taken-
times at the park. This
Okay.
is, I just, because the shirt's different there, so it
Okay.
does show 2.
Okay, so those were taken during your visitation after you were in front of Judge Wolf, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. And
Okay.
then the very last one, that was from April.
Okay,
Right,
so that one, okay.
I found out on March 25th that he was my biological son, and I was able to go down and have a visit at Ms. Hewitt's home. And actually, that's not at her home. This is when I took him and Sophie to Thunder Alley, the bowling alley, with my
Okay.
mother.
And so Ms. Hewitt allowed you to take Ashton outside of her home?
Yes, ma'am.
Outside of her presence, okay. Would like to enter that as an exhibit. And so you're asking Judge Wolf to grant you December the 24th from 12 p.m., is that right?
Please.
To December 25 at noontime.
That's
So that
correct.
mom can have the second half of Christmas vacation.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then, Judge, I also have in the motion the supervised visitation, so will that be continued, or am I allowed to go ahead and request for that
Well-
hearing?
Your motion is for, I'm not going to modify the order other than to set some Christmas visitation. The order, previous order, was to be unsupervised beginning November 30th, according to that original order, at least the way it was drawn, correct?
Yes, Judge.
The way the order was drawn states that after 90 days, he shall have unsupervised visitation from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. with permission to take the child to locations outside the mother's home during his parenting time. And that was entered in November. So I'm not going to address anything except Christmas visitation at this point, since she has no attorney.
And that's all my questions, Judge.
Ms. Hewitt, you have the right, acting as your own attorney, to ask questions of him regarding his request for Christmas visitation or anything he's testified to. It is not your time to testify. I'm going to give you a chance to testify, but do you have questions you want to ask? If you do, you need to go to the podium. You're not required to ask any questions, but it is your chance to ask them if you have any.
So did you have open CPS investigations in Scottsville regarding your stepdaughter, your ex-wife? So there's not court documents in Scottsville, Kentucky, where you and Buffy went to court with their stepdaughter, your stepdaughter?
I never.
You don't remember going to court with your ex-wife?
No.
So if we pull the files, the court records,
You can pull, there is no, I
Yes.
have zero criminal record whatsoever.
you changed your last name.
I
That's
changed my
why you
last
changed your
name at
last name.
32. I have my,
I'm sorry. You're going to ask in the form of a question. You can ask him whether or not he did or did not change his last name.
Did you change your last name after you and your wife went to court for your stepdaughter, buying her a, do I quote, practice for her?
I changed my last name at 32 years old after I went through my first divorce and had my lawyer retained when my grandmother was on her deathbed, because she asked me to change my last name because I'd never carried my father's last name. With my DNA records, I changed my last name.
Had nothing to do with trying to evade what had,
No.
Transpired in court with your ex-wife
It had to do with me having
and-
the wrong last name.
okay, your whole life.
Men are supposed to carry their father's last name, so you can pass
mean-
it on.
Just kind of weird it happened after.
You can't make a statement.
Sorry.
You need to ask a question.
Okay. I don't feel safe.
Thank you. Just have a seat. Hold on, Mr. Benton, where do you live?
Scottsville, Kentucky, it's east of Bowling Green, about 10 miles across the
So
Tennessee, Kentucky.
how long does it take you to drive between there and where the child is living?
It's 2 hours without traffic, 2.5 with traffic. It varies, I always allow 2.5 hours.
How long did you, how long, I'm sorry. How long have you had this lady in your life?
Over 3 years, 3 years.
And
in
is she
October.
living with you at that address?
Yes.
All right, so that, the pictures that we show is your residence with this lady that your girlfriend or paramour or
Fiancé.
whatever live in together. Okay. Now, and does she have children?
Yes, a 16-year-old. She turned 16 December the 9th, Elena, which
Right.
is in the courtroom today.
Allegations get made in divorces sometimes to gain an advantage over a custody situation. And I'm just going to ask you that you're under oath and you understand that lying under oath is aggravated perjury, a felony.
Yes, sir.
So she's asked you a question about this issue, about whether or not there was ever an accusation made against you that you had a child in a prior situation. Was there such an allegation? Yes or no?
There was a CPS investigation, but it wasn't to do with anything to do with me, the child. It had to do with her finding a sex toy that was brand new in the laundry room late at night and carried it to her bedroom across the house. Took a picture of it, sent it to her friends by her grandma's.
And it was a what now?
It was a sex toy, like a little, but it
A
was
sex toy.
It was brand new, and it was wrapped up in a package in the laundry room, hidden.
And who did this? The child took a picture of it?
She took it from the laundry room while everybody else was in bed, took it to her bedroom, unwrapped it, snapped a picture of it, and sent it to her friend that lived beside her grandma in Westmoreland, Tennessee. Well, the friend shows her mom, mom calls grandma, grandma calls CPS.
All right. So there was an investigation. What was the result of that investigation?
Was her brother stayed there and she went and lived with her dad and then ultimately went to live at her grandma's.
All right.
Her brother graduated
But there was
from
never,
home.
according to you, there was never any investigation of you for you allegedly having committed some act against
No,
this child?
no, and no criminal, anything, I mean, no.
Now, your child, your son, and this is a little boy, correct?
Yes, sir.
And he is 3 years old, and you have had contact with him since you learned, as you said, in March, that he was your March of this year, that he was your
2025.
biological
That was
child.
March the 25th, yes, sir.
And you understand that's not a very long period of time to have a relationship with a child that's 3 years old. You're just beginning to learn him and him learn you. You understand that?
Yes, sir.
And we are not going to deal with what's going to happen visitation-wise with, the future, except I'm trying to deal with this Christmas visitation. Who is you're saying is coming to your house for Christmas?
My mother, which is 82 years old, and my sister, Jaren, which Miss Hewitt was best friends with when we were kids. And she is 2 years older than me, so she would be 43. And then I have two nieces that are 12 and 10. And then I have two grown nieces that are 24 and 26 who are registered nurses. And then a nephew, and he's 20, and he's in the medical field as well.
All right. Okay.
Anton, I just want to clarify the change of name, and I'm going to pass some documents to you. Tell me what those documents are.
My original birth certificate from when I was born, and then my original social security card with my last name reading Englehart, as well as a birth certificate. When I was born, from 0 to 1, my name was changed 3 times by my mom, or twice. I know I carried my sister. We have different dads' last name originally, which was Reisinger, and then my mother changed it to Englehart when I was 0 to 1. And when my grandma was on her deathbed, she asked me to change my last name. She said, "You're going to have a son one day, and I want him to have the right last name." She said, "So you have your DNA records. Please go change your last name." I did this at 32 years old, so many, many years ago. It's been 9 years since I did this.
So you didn't change your name to evade some criminal prosecution whatsoever?
No, not at all.
And tell me about the clearances that you have gotten from the government, from NASA and things like that, just very briefly.
I did a project year before last in Mississippi at the NASA facility, which is a government facility. And I mean, you have to do extensive background checks, and I have a U.S. government badge on the table.
Okay, so they had run your criminal background and things like that. Is that
Yes,
right?
ma'am. I've worked federal projects, so anytime I work on my airport, like B&A Airport or any high-profile job, it's part of it, you have
Okay.
to-
And that's an ongoing situation with your current job, is that right?
Yes, for the last 23 years. That's correct.
And the reason why you were not able to visit with your child from the time that he was born was because Miss Hewitt concealed the real paternity of Ashton to you. Is that correct?
Yes, and I have that in a message where she told me I came in from Virginia when he was expected, and she would not let me come to the hospital, told me it had nothing to do with me, that she had already DNA'd the father, and I just assumed he was already there. And the other father is actually, she goes up, I don't know, she had a DUI, and the bondsman that bonded her out of jail was the other potential father, and he was exonerated or when Ashton was 1 year old, I received notice from the Tennessee Child Support Office in February of this year, asking me to do a DNA test.
Okay.
And that was how I found out.
And then from then on, you tried to foster the relationship, is that right?
Yes.
And is that your purpose here is to continue to have that relationship with your son?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's all, Judge. And I'm not entering those documents into the exhibit, so you can take it with you.
Okay.
So you and Miss Hewitt had a relationship at some point. How long was that relationship?
We never had a relationship. We knew each other from the time we were children, from about 5 to 16. My mom's farm, which she still owns in Rockbridge, Bethpage, Tennessee.
Well, obviously she became pregnant, so you had some sort of relationship.
Well, I was married for years, and I didn't really see Miss Hewitt until I guess it would have been the beginning of 2020 and Facebook. She ended up reaching out to me on Facebook, and I went down, and it was kind of just went down for the weekend and met with Miss Hewitt, and then it wasn't long afterwards she stated that she was pregnant, and I went back down, only on a couple weekends, but I knew that the other potential father was, that they were having a relationship as well, based off of their phone conversations, and I worked on the road at the time. I worked on the gas pipelines, so I did a lot of travel. And
Okay, so when did you find out she was pregnant?
probably about a week after or 2. Well, really, I didn't know for sure until 4.5 months when I took her to the doctor.
All right,
For the
and
first
who
time.
did she tell you was the father of this child?
She told me it was the other guy. I'm not sure his name.
So you at no time knew that you were the father until you got this petition from the Department of Child Support Office, rather.
No, I mean, she told me when she first got pregnant that it was mine, but then it changed very quickly that it was the other guy's. And so I didn't really, I'm 40, fixing to be 41, and I've never had a biological child. So I believed her. I really believed that, it was the other man's child, but.
All right. Ms. Hewitt, you have the right, if you have any other questions, I'll allow you to ask those questions. Do you have anything else you want to ask him? All right. Thank you. Step down. All right. Mr. Fenton has rested his proof. So, Ms. Hewitt, if you want to be heard on this issue, I'll be glad to let you testify. But we're also just dealing with his request for Christmas visitation, in which he is requesting Christmas Eve until Christmas Day at noon. So come to the podium. If you're going to testify, are you going to testify? Then come around here and raise your right hand and be placed under oath. All right. Let me correct one thing. I know you referred to this as my child. That my child is nonverbal autistic. Number one, it's not just your child. He is the father of that child, and the legal rights that he has are such that you cannot simply say, "This is my child. I'm going to do it my way." So you have to understand that he has a legal right that has to be balanced with your legal right, and first and foremost is the best interest of the child. So why don't you tell me what it is that you object to him having visitation over Christmas?
I don't object to supervised visitation at all, but he doesn't know Ashton well enough or anything about, I've raised a 22-year-old special, autistic, and he's in college now for cybersecurity. He works at Walgreens, licensed pharmacy tech. I've been doing this a long time. I've got a 12-year-old daughter and now Ashton, but he's more special needs than any of them. He's got a rare heart condition also. He gets therapies all through the week. He was previously with TEIS from birth, and then we switched over to the Board of Education where he gets ABA, OT, PT, speech, and it's just, he doesn't know when he's overstimulated, and even when he's had this visitation, the only thing that he does is pick him up. He doesn't try to talk to him or anything. And he's worried about taking him out to his truck where his girlfriend sits the whole time outside the house in the truck. That's what he goes out there, and he's more worried about her sitting in the truck than my child. And we got in an argument because he was teaching him to go up to the road. And he kept trying to go up there, and he let him lay on the horn, and I have neighbors and things too. But, I mean, I don't feel comfortable. And as far as, I mean, I can prove from his own messages I've got printed out, he's known since day one this is his child. The only reason any of this started, because I had to work with DHS child support finally, and to be honest, I wish I just never did. I wouldn't have to deal with this because he's dangerous, he's erratic. And as far as his sister, I've got messages from his sister too. His sister and his nieces and nephews, they don't want anything to do with him. His mom's even scared of him and doesn't like to deal with him. Yes, she's rode down there to see Ashton, but at the same time, she knows and how he is. He's just erratic. You never know what it's going to be. And he always takes it out on women and children.
Right. So when you say you would be in favor of supervised visitation, what exactly are you proposing?
Continue like at my house supervised, where I can see.
Has he been allowed to take the child away from your house?
Like to the playground.
So he's been away from you while he's had this child?
I mean, I drove down there, and then the other time the neighbor that I'm friends with watched.
Right.
But it's right next to my house.
Ms. Hendrickson, do you have any questions?
Who is your son's pediatrician?
What does that have to do with anything?
What was your question?
Who is the child's pediatrician? She's saying that the child is going through therapy and things, which we don't think it's correct.
Number one, you don't get to, you can object to a question, but that here, you need to understand one thing. And this is, you referred to the child as my child more than once. And I thought maybe I'd emphasize it enough, but I want to make sure you understand. This is the father of this child. You and he had a sexual relationship, and he is the biological father of this child. Therefore, he is vested with certain rights that the law in the state of Tennessee give him. Those rights include, as a non-custodial parent, the right to know who the child's doctors are, the right to be advised of certain things about this child. And when this is all said and done, there's going to be a parenting plan that's going to be entered that's going to set forth all of that information. But you cannot simply say that you're not going to let him know who the pediatrician is.
I mean,
so you're going to have to answer that question for Ms. Hendrickson. Answer the question.
Dr. Carol Moore.
What's the first name?
Carol.
Carol, C-A-R-O-L?
Mm-hmm.
And where is the office at?
Dixon on Mathis Drive.
On where?
Mathis Drive.
Okay, so if I check the records, they will have Ashton's file there, medical records there?
Yes.
Okay. Who is the cardiologist?
Dr. Bruns.
Can you say that again?
Dr. Bruns.
Can you spell that?
B-R-U-N-S.
What's the first name?
I don't know.
Okay. And where is his office at?
He comes up here certain days, but his main office is at Centennial.
Centennial in Nashville?
Yes.
Centennial Boulevard?
Centennial, like the hospital Centennial.
Oh, Centennial Hospital. I see what you're saying. Okay. And you said your son has a rare heart condition. What
Epstein's.
is that rare heart condition?
It's Epstein's anomaly, pulmonary hypertension. One of the valves isn't fully formed, so it gushes. He's been getting EKG since he was born, and he didn't have to luckily be on medication, but we had to wean him off oxygen.
So, but he's able to play like a regular child and things like that. Is that right?
I mean, he plays.
Yeah. Okay, so the judge asked you, you've allowed Mr. Fenton to go to the park with Ashton. That was asked. Tell me about the therapy. So you said there's an occupational therapy, a physical therapy, and a speech therapy. Just
ABA.
briefly, what is the schedule during the week on that?
He goes to school during the week, and from 7:30 to 10:30, and we just redid his IEP where they wanted to increase 30 minutes of physical therapy because of the lack of muscle tone in his feet being hypermobile.
What exact school are you talking about? Where are you taking him?
Oakmont Elementary, special services.
Okay, so he's enrolled there right now?
Yes,
Okay.
and previously TEIS since birth.
Okay. Mr. Fenton has brought his mother with him on some occasions. You remember that?
Yeah, I love his mom. I
Right,
mean, I
so-
love her.
So it's not true that he does not have a good relationship with his mother,
No, he
because in
do- he-
fact, he has taken him to your house so that he can see his grandson. Is that right?
That doesn't mean he has a good relationship with his mom.
But he has taken the grandma with him
Yeah.
on
and
some
then
of the
she comes
visitation. Okay.
And, yeah,
So Ashton has met his grandma, correct?
yes.
Okay. And then, and you're saying that Mr. Fenton knew about the paternity, but in fact, you texted him confirming that you told him he was not the father. Do you remember that text message?
Oh, yes, I've got text messages too, but after many drunk, late night, crazy messages, and I mean, him calling me a drunk gutter slut and all this stuff, so, and I've got the message from my sister too, telling me just say it's not his.
Okay, so but you never corrected it. Let's say you were drunk when
But
you
he
told
knew.
him you're not the.
I don't
Let
drink.
me finish the question, ma'am.
I don't drink.
Well, you just said you were drunk.
I said he was drunk.
Oh, he was drunk. Okay, so but you are confirming that you told him he was not the father. Is that correct?
Yes, but he knew.
Okay.
He had a
So
period
it was
tracker
a
on his phone.
misstatement, ma'am.
One of you
I'm
talk
sorry.
at a time, please.
So it was a misstatement when you claimed there on that stand that he knew all along, because you told him he was not the father.
He knew all along. He had a period tracker on my phone. We were never apart in the beginning when we were together. He purposely got me pregnant. And then when I wouldn't move out and live in a travel trailer, like when I worked out of town and lose my housing and all that crap, he got mad and but I would still get just crazy erratic messages, or he'd show up out of the blue.
But why did you tell him that the DNA test was not
He had a
him?
DNA test in his truck when he came down after Ashton was first born. Walked in the house, said he had a DNA test in the truck, but he knew he didn't need it because it was his kid. And before this was even set up to let him see him, I let his mom and him come see Ashton at my house without any orders. And I said that they could come see him.
Okay, but since then, you were not following the judge's order.
Well-
You have not been allowing Mr. Fenton to see his son whenever it's possible. I understand when the child is sick, but when he's not sick, he shows up after 2.5 hours
You're
of
not
driving.
Ms. Hendrickson, I've told you, we're not dealing with the contempt issue, and I don't think it's
Understand,
appropriate to
Judge.
go into those issues.
That's all my
This is
question.
only about the.
And I only know of the supervised Saturdays. And it says that in the YouTube video, we were supposed to come to court back to here after 90 days. Now, what you
I
ever
just
drew
ruled
up,
that we're not going into that, so you
Sorry.
don't have to say anything else about that. So,
That's all my questions, Judge.
anything else you want to say?
me,
All right, thank you. Step down. Do you have any witnesses you wish to call? All I can say is that, number one, the court's main emphasis in all of these cases is the best interest of the minor child. Mr. Fenton says he was not aware that he was the father. In fact, he was denied that he was the father, and therefore he didn't take any steps over the last 3 years until he got notified that he was going to be the father, or that he was potentially the father, and then the testing proved that he was. She says, of course, Ms. Hewitt says that he knew all along he was the father. I'm not sure exactly how she said he intended to get her pregnant and so forth, but they had a voluntary sexual relationship that resulted in a child. That is the immutable fact. And as a result of that, we've got a child who's in the middle of this scenario. Ms. Hewitt obviously has nothing good to say about the man she had sex with and had a child with, but she essentially doesn't want him to have unsupervised visitation. I don't have any proof before me that he poses a threat to this child, but by the same token, the proof before me is that he has a number of health issues, including being nonverbal autistic. Even Mr. Fenton testified the young man is very limited in what he has to say. It's a giant leap from going from supervised visitation of a child that you first get acquainted with at 2.5 or 3 years old, to having the child spend the night with you on Christmas Eve and until Christmas Day at noon. That's a world away from what I think this child would be used to. But by the same token, he needs to have visitation with a child that his family can be a participant in, because this extended family is this child's family. So the balancing of those is the difficult part of this. I think that under these circumstances, I'm not going to grant him the visitation from Christmas Eve overnight to Christmas Day, but I will grant him visitation from 8 o'clock Christmas morning until 6 o'clock p.m. Christmas Eve morning at 8 a.m. to Christmas Eve at 6 p.m. He'll have the right to take the child to Kentucky if that's what he wishes to do, to visit with his family. He will give her a telephone number where she can talk to the child while he's there and make sure that she's reassured that there's not any problems. The only reason I'm not granting the overnight visitation is my concern about these health issues, a congenital heart defect, other issues that Ms. Hewitt says under oath this child has. You're going to have a right to look at those medical records and determine whether or not she's being truthful with the court. Same thing, you be quiet when I'm talking. Same thing goes for your testimony about what you say this past event has. She has a right to bring in evidence regarding that, and I'll determine at a later time, or one of the other judges would, whether or not you've been truthful in the history that you've given me. This child deserves to have both parents, but I'm of the opinion that right now you need to take small steps to get to that point. So I'm giving you unsupervised visitation on Christmas Eve of this year to allow you to try to have that time with your family in that, and we'll see how that goes. But I am of the opinion that is the best scenario I can create for the child to have that contact. And that will be the order of the court. So Ms. Hendrickson will draw this order, and the visitation will begin at 8 a.m. Christmas Eve morning.
Judge, if I may, maybe request that mother just, the exchange should happen at the Dixon Police Department instead of the father going to the house, because in the past, the mother would just simply lock the doors.
That
And
happens,
so-
she's going to go to jail. So, he may miss his Christmas visitation. He may end up with custody of the child because she's going to, if she denies this court order, she is looking at 10 days in jail minimum, because that's what's going to happen, Ms. Hewitt. I'm ordering this. You have to comply. You don't have a choice. And as a result, it's 8 a.m. Christmas Eve morning until 6 p.m. Christmas Eve night. He will pick the child up at her house. I'm not going to traumatize this child further by having the child have to go to the police station and be exchanged with his parent. All that's going to do is convey to the child that there's something dangerous going on here, or else there wouldn't have to be exchanged at the police department. You'll pick child up, you'll have the child ready to go with whatever needs to go with him to be able to spend the day. The child goes to daycare, so he's away from you for times. This is nothing different than that, except it'll be in his home. You don't bring it back, you violate this court order by some fashion, then you're going to go to jail. I don't want to put either one of you in jail. I want you to behave and do what you're supposed to. It's Christmas, for goodness sakes. You're supposed to have a contact with your family. This child, I'm doing this for the child's benefit, not for Mr. Fenton's benefit. I'm doing it so this child can have time with his extended family and begin to learn that these are his family, these people are his family, and that he has these other relationships. He has medical issues. We'll have to deal with those things down the road. But this is my order for today.
Judge, and one more thing, Ms. Hewitt did start saying that she brought some documents. I did have a subpoena ducis tecum issued
I'm not
for
dealing with
her.
that, Ms. Hendrickson. I said all along that this is only about the Christmas
For the Christmas
visitation.
visitation.
You have other motions, you have other court dates, you can reset your motion. In January, we have a number of different chancery days. You can get with the clerk, you can reset your motions for a day in January, and we'll deal from there. But I'm telling you both right now, you better start thinking about the best interest of this child and not the possessory interest. I'm very concerned, Ms. Hewitt, about you referring to my child, my child, my child. It is your child, it is his child. So you need to start phrasing it differently, because all that means to someone like me or to Mr. Fenton is that you think he belongs to you and he has no right. And I'm telling you, he has rights that are given to him under the law of the state of Tennessee, and I'm going to enforce those rights, but I'm also going to do it in a way that this child will benefit the most that I can create. All right, Ms. Hendrickson will draw the order. We have 15 minutes before we have to break for lunch.
Thank you, Judge.
Anybody have anything that they want to take up in the next 15 minutes?